Hello, my friends. I recently heard, 119 Ministries came out with a video reviewing the book of Enoch. And if you're familiar with my channel, you know I'm quite passionate about the Luminary section of the book of Enoch. So I just want to put a quick response video together addressing some of the points brought up by 119 Ministries, but there actually wasn't much of a discussion about the Luminary section of the book of Enoch. But I do like how 119 Ministries included a source somewhere in their video, where even that source that they included when he was talking about how Enoch is a conglomeration of different writers who kind of took Enoch's name and attached their writing to his name, and that all became the book of Enoch, which I can't say I disagree with. I'll talk more about that in a moment. But that writer said, one of them said, with the exception of the Luminary section of Enoch. And so I'm glad to hear him say that. And so on that note of being a conglomeration of different writers, I think I have to agree with that. Like, if you check out my channel, I have a series playlist on my channel that's talking about Enoch, and I think one of the first couple videos of that series I do talk about the authority of Enoch, or it was in the introduction or something, and it was a couple of years ago, but I do remember there were a couple things like the birth of Noah or something. There was just something that didn't seem possible, like Noah was had to be a contemporary of Enoch, or vice versa, or it couldn't be, or something. Check out my videos to hear more about that. And so it just didn't seem like part of that story fit, because the timeline was wrong, like they weren't contemporaries or something. So, I mean, I don't disagree with what 119 Ministries says, that some of Enoch may have been added to. I do agree with the one source who said, possibly with the exception of the Luminary section, and he was saying that could be authentic. And, I also, the beginning of Enoch, where the Jude quotes Enoch, I think the translation 119 Ministries used is I've seen most of the translations I've seen of Enoch 1 are closer than the one they were using to what Jude says, but I just like to remind everyone that none of the prophecies in the New Testament, a lot of them you will find are not exactly quoted the same as what you read in the Old Testament. And that is because of the Old Testament being written in Hebrew and the New Testament being written in Greek. Like, when things got translated, they don't. If you've ever read any of those messianic prophecies or such in the New Testament, you might have noticed that they don't match up word for word with with how they appear in the Old Testament. That's because things were kind of lost and shuffled in translation, Greek and Hebrew. And so the same is true with that scripture that Jude quoted from Enoch. Like, it's not exactly word for word, but it's very, very close, and it's just as close as many of the other prophecies in the New Testament translated, from the Old, except in Enoch's case, it might not be a matter of Greek and Hebrew. It might have actually been Aramaic or something, and so I would say. And then there was another point 119 Ministry made where it was talking about Josephus, and how Josephus said there were 22 books in the Old Testament, and 119 Ministries is talking about how those could have been, like, it could have been Jude combined with, or not Jude, Ruth combined with Judges, and Lamentations combined with Jeremiah. And the thing is, Josephus never, clearly spelled out how many books were part of that group that he called the prophets. But I'd just like to point out, I'm pretty sure Enoch is prophetic. And I mean, that verse in Jude is about prophecy. So it's very possible, just as 119 Ministries was grouping Ruth with Judges and Lamentations with Jeremiah, I think it's very possible that Josephus's list of 22 books could have probably included Enoch. So I think it's kind of an assumption to say with too much certainty one way or the other. You just can't do that. It's good food for thought, but nothing really conclusive there. That Son of Man quote was very interesting, the point 119 Ministries brought up. I actually hear that one a lot because I have listened to an audio version of Enoch in my car. I have long commutes to work, and so I'll listen to the scriptures and I'll listen to Enoch, and so I've heard it a lot, and I have a passion for trying to understand the Creator's times and how the heavenly luminaries move in the heavens. So I have listened to the Luminary section of Enoch many, many times, and I don't have like the audio cut. I just have like the entire audio of the book of Enoch, and so I kind of have to fast forward and rewind to get to the Luminary section. And right before the Luminary section is this part that talks about the Son of Man. And I just had to listen to it again real quick before I made this recording after I heard 119 Ministries mention that point. And I guess my translation is one of those translations where it doesn't follow the logic that 119 Ministries was presenting. Like, it actually talks about the Son of Man being someone else other than Enoch. Like, it's introduced as saying, the angel brought Enoch to meet the Son of Man, or told him who he was. And I mean, maybe that title is just added, but I mean, I re-listened to the context of that. And it'll be interesting to check the translation, to go deeper and to check the translation on that one. But again, it might just be one of those sections that got it added in there. It doesn't mean I would throw out the Luminary section. But it is a curious point to look into and kind of interesting. But I have created a Facebook group called Enoch 1 Luminary Section Interactive Translation Project, where I've been focusing on trying to get the proper translation for just the Luminary section, but maybe I ought to make another group where I do have another group that's called the Interactive Translation Project, where we're looking at the entire scriptures, and the entire book of Enoch will be there. So I mean, it's just if you have an interest in digging deeper into the translation, that group on Facebook for Enoch, I have started to track down some of the original manuscripts, so you can find out more information by searching for that group. I'll have a link for it in the description below this video. But let's see, another point going back to the calendar. I think 119 Ministries was saying a lot about the Essenes or the Qumran group, or the early Jews or something, and that, like, they were very brief about the Luminary section, and I think they were saying not even those groups I mentioned, not even them were esteeming or following Enoch, which I can't necessarily disagree with entirely. I think at that point, some information, I don't doubt that Yeshua was following the proper calendar, but I do think the calendar was kind of lost at that point to the Pharisees, and there are a lot of interesting things to dive into there, like when his disciples and the Jews were getting together for one of the holy days in the New Testament, Yeshua's response was, "My time has not yet come." So I mean, there are lots of little things like that to suggest that there was possibly a couple different calendars at the time, and maybe Yeshua wasn't actually on the same exact one that they were on. But anyway, maybe I just want to wrap this up by talking about the luminaries themselves and the value I've seen in the Luminary section of Enoch. And just encourage people not to so quickly discard that stuff, because I think Enoch talks. Enoch is. Keep in mind, it's not a calendar. What Enoch presents, it's just observational data recorded about what the luminaries were doing. So he doesn't tell you when the holy days are, but he does explain the mechanics of the Creator's timepieces. And I have to admit, though I don't fully rely on Enoch, and I think it's possible to understand the Creator's times just purely through Genesis 1:14. Enoch was very useful for helping me to understand timing of different events and different signs of the heavens. And for example, for the beginning of the year, Enoch describes, in a nutshell, I have lots more videos on my YouTube channel where I go into detail, but, these signs are still happening today. Like, what is written in Enoch, I believe, is accurate. And for example, you should search YouTube for some of these sign confirmations that happened this past spring. Like, for example, Enoch talks about how the sun and the moon, the sun moves obviously east to west over the course of a day, but it also moves slightly north to south every day, and that's what gives us the seasons, is because the sun is close or it's far away. It moves north and south, and so the moon also does this. People don't notice that. I think they're so focused on the phases, and they don't notice the how it's moving north to south as well. But Enoch describes that the moon lines up, the movement north to south lines up with the sun every year, I think, at the spring equinox, in the same exact position with respect north and south, right in the middle for the spring equinox, like right over, I guess, the equator or something. But it was witnessed this year. There's some great video footage of the moon and the sun both setting in the same exact location. I'd recommend you check out Jerry Morris's video channel on YouTube. He has a time-lapse video showing this alignment. And Juan Carlos, he has Light to the Nations channel. He also got some pictures and some footage of I believe the moon setting with the sun. And so there are these signs that are happening, and we can confirm. And on the phases of the moon, I just want to mention one more thing that Enoch really was important for me, opening my eyes to the Creator's times, was you've got to realize that many of the Bibles have a biased translation when it comes to months. And I think in my experience of growing my channel and, seeing different topics that people are interested in, truth seekers are looking into, the topic of the month seems to be the biggest thing people are looking into. And so I recommend you check my channel for the videos I have in regards to months. But the thing is, the scriptures are not translated correctly. I mean, you've heard ministries like 119 Ministries, they'll point this stuff out all the time, like, Yeshua saying, "Think not that I come to destroy the law and the prophets. I come not to destroy, but to fulfill." To fully preach. There are better ways. You hear how there are better words to translate things. So the same thing is going on with the moon. You hear this phrase, new moons, in the scriptures, and that you have to look into it, but it should have been translated as new months. It's a biased translation to call it new moons, and it really is a big player in the trying to understand how the Creator's times work. And so that realization helped me to realize, okay, it's a yellow flag to pay attention, proceed with caution, and if someone's too focused on the moon, just step back, because the scriptures said month, not moon. And so it was Enoch, the beginning of the Luminary section of Enoch, where he starts out by saying these were the luminaries, their positions, their seasons, their durations. And then it says their months, according to their months, and it said plural. So it was talking sun and moon, and as you read Enoch, you realize he talks about solar months and lunar months, and possibly even star months, but definitely solar and lunar months. And so you just have to be honest and look at the scriptures and realize those scriptures are translated incorrectly. Like, it shouldn't be new month, it shouldn't be new moon, it should be new month. And then you realize Enoch describes a couple different kinds of months, and there is a month that actually syncs up perfectly with the 4-season year cycle, the solar months. Like, there are 4 solar seasons. The seasons are a result of the sun. It's a solar year cycle that we see, this 4-season cycle occurring. And so the Enoch describes those seasons, and he describes those months, and it is, I believe it is accurate. Like, we see the signs, and we see the seasons, and the months, the solar months, are very precise too. Like, each season has 3 solar months, and I think the year simply begins with the first day of spring, and the first solar month simply begins, it's the first day of that. It's a solar year, and it's the first day, and I think that is what is described in Enoch, and you can see these things, and so I would say that gave me value to understanding and appreciating the luminary section of Enoch. There are some things that are still in the process of being figured out. For example, the 364 versus 365 solar year thing. But I would encourage you not to be so quick to discard Enoch the luminary sections based off of that kind of stuff. There are a lot of theories floating around out there, and I do think we're getting very close to understanding what Enoch was talking about with respect to that 364-day thing. I think I do have a couple videos that I posted lately, just search 364, but I do think it has something to do with looking at the Earth from the Creator's perspective, and looking at how much clock time or how much luminary movement actually needs to occur for everyone on Earth to see a one-day cycle with light and darkness. How much time does everyone on Earth need to see if the clock were to start somewhere? So I think I think we're getting very close to understanding these things in Enoch, but I do think there's already been lots of evidence that a lot of what Enoch says in the luminary section is accurate, and things you need, as you study things, if there are contradictions, you do need to look into them, and you have to be loving, and you have to be humble, diligent, and willing to potentially put it all. You need to search it out and follow, be diligent and pray about it, and follow after truth, and you'll be able to prove things out. I mean, don't be afraid if that means someday that it does, you are convinced one way or another that Enoch is trash, or the luminary section is trash. I mean, that is a possibility we all have to be open to, I guess. But I haven't been convinced of that yet. I am open for more discussion. Like I said, 119 Ministries didn't really discuss the luminary section too much, so I would invite them to do so, or anyone else who has any thoughts, please contribute your thoughts. And we're all learning, and I don't claim to have it all figured out, and we just need to discuss these things in love. And I don't think it needs to be a topic that needs to be controversial. Like, we can discuss these things in love and humility, hopefully, and we'll just iron-sharpening-iron. So that's all I have to say, I guess. Shalom, and may Abba bless you as you continually seek out His truth and love with a pure heart.